What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Luke Innes here, time to review another movie. We're going outside of the horror genre, yet again, to talk about a movie that not nearly enough people talk about. It's the 1972 Jamaican crime movie, The Harder They Come. So the movie was directed by Perry Henzell and stars the immortal Jimmy Cliff. So in the movie, Jimmy Cliff plays Ivan Martin, a young man who has moved from the country to the big city in search of work. He gets there, he can't really find it, he's living on the breadline, eventually manages to find a job, but continuously he's dreaming of becoming a famous recording artist. Due to the corruption of the music industry, he loses the rights to his music and is not really making money from it anymore. As a result of this, he gets involved in crime. He gets involved in the cannabis trade in Jamaica. One of the people who he associates with in the trade turns on him and sends a police officer to arrest him. When he kills the police officer and a couple more slightly later on, he has to go on the run. Ivan becomes Jamaica's most wanted man, and at the same time his record reaches the top of the charts. So there's a lot of reasons why The Harder They Come is so interesting to me. Apparently it's the first feature-length film ever produced in Jamaica, which is always going to be an interesting thing to see. You know, especially for someone like me who really, I don't have any real familiarity with kind of Jamaican and Caribbean film making particularly, so it's very interesting for someone like me. It's also interesting to note that apparently the movie was banned initially in Jamaica because they were worried that it would encourage hooliganism amongst Jamaican youth. And I really doubt that that's the actual reason it was banned. I think the reason it was banned is just how critical it was of the kind of police in Jamaica and the political system, you know? You know, you're talking about a movie where, you know, a guy, because of mass unemployment and corruption, ends up a part of this whole illegal industry which is kind of in cahoots with the police. And I just think the portrayal of kind of authority figures and police in the movie was kind of the thing that, as well as the portrayal of Jamaica itself as this, you know, place of mass unemployment and crime, was the reason that this movie got banned in Jamaica. One of my favourite things about The Harder They Come, and I cannot overstate this, is how fucking amazing the soundtrack is. I mean, this is the film that is credited with introducing reggae music to an international audience, and it's really not hard to see why when you look at the quality of the songs both recorded and licensed for the movie. These are songs that really, it's hard to say, but I think without the movie they probably still would have stood the test of time. You Can Get It If You Really Want, Many Rivers to Cross. These are Jimmy Cliff songs. It's not just Jimmy Cliff on the soundtrack. There's plenty of other really great reggae and ska music on the soundtrack. Pressure Drop, Johnny Too Bad, 007 Shantytown. Just really great songs that kind of give the movie such a different feel. That's one of the most interesting things about The Harder They Come, is just how different it feels to most movies, you know. Obviously it's set against a landscape that is totally alien to most people, this kind of third world, you know, shantytown, which is, you know, obviously not a world that a lot of people are familiar with. Especially not the sort of people who are like me or are going to be likely to be watching this video, you know. And that is kind of confounded for me by the fact that this movie doesn't water down the kind of cultural aspect, you know, in terms of the way these characters speak. They all speak in, you know, Jamaican patois. They speak like Jamaican people. You know, it would have been quite easy for the you know, the filmmakers to write a script that was basically in English but with the occasional kind of patois put in, because that would have been, you know, easier for international distribution. But they decided not to do that. They said let's go for it. Let's you know, show courage of our convictions and make a movie where everyone speaks in Jamaican patois because the film is set in Jamaica, you know. I think another thing that I love about The Harder They Come is watching the character develop of Ivan. You see this guy who kind of feels like he's lost control of his art. You sort of start to come to the realisation with the film that actually the fame and the money is far more important to this character than the art. You know, he totally revels in his outlaw image. You know, he's getting photos taken by professional photographers and sending them to the press. It's a very interesting kind of look at this character, and how a character can be kind of transformed by their circumstances. You know, this is a guy who is totally impoverished, he has got nothing to his name, he's having to beg for work, and when he gets into this position of having money and having, you know, a livelihood, he would rather you know, live and die as this famous outlaw than go back to being nobody and seeing out the rest of his life as a nobody. And that's a very interesting kind of message to incorporate into the film, I think. You know, obviously, you know, it's probably for the best that you don't be like Ivan, but at the same time his philosophy is quite an interesting one. This philosophy of, you know, not giving up on the things that mean something to you. If it means something to you, just go for it, you know. If I had to criticise the movie for anything, it is a little bit overlong. There's 5 or 10 minutes that I think could be cut out of the movie. For instance, some of the scenes early on in the church where it's just people, you know, singing and stuff, I think you could trim down on that. And I think it's got to be, you know, in all fairness, the acting at times is a little bit ropey, but with a movie this kind of low budget, I think you've got to cut them some slack for that, because, you know, it's not like there was a huge amount of professional actors on hand. You know, Jimmy Cliff is the main star in this movie, and he'd never really acted before this movie. He was a singer, you know. So, I mean, as I say, on the whole, I just think The Harder They Come is a great movie. It's a product of its time. It's a product of where it comes from. You know, it deals with themes that were interesting and kind of relevant to the place that it came from, which is always something that I love to see. It's, you know, films like this, you really feel like you've learned something about where they're from by watching them. As I say, this is a film I really enjoy, and I really hope that this review points a few people who wouldn't otherwise be familiar in the direction of seeing the film. Overall, I'm going to give The Harder They Come a 9 out of 10. I definitely think that for what it's worth and what the people kind of behind it had at their disposal, this film is a great success, really. And I would highly recommend you go and see The Harder They Come, because it is something very different that I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Luke Innes. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Please do like, comment and subscribe, or all that. Also, go into the description, check out my podcast. It's called Ironcast. I'd love you to do that. It's all about music. Thanks very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll speak to you again very soon.